back to Texas Platinum, the last of the real water cooler talk shows on YouTube. We made it through the bye week, and Texas has a top 10 matchup this weekend in Athens, Georgia. And we are very excited. And quite frankly, I think you win this game, you're in the playoff. That's just my thought, assuming you beat Arkansas. But we'll get into that. We'll preview the game, give our thoughts on the dogs and how we can exploit them, and Texas's path to victory this weekend. So before we do that, please like and subscribe and comment. Give us some love. Give us some love. You know, we've been putting in some work back in the channel, and we're trying to make it great, like it used to be back in the day. I don't want to say make it great again, but all right, we're trying to make the channel great again. I said it. But Kyle, what are your thoughts on this upcoming week, man? It's a tough game in Athens, but it kind of reminds me of 2023 Alabama. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, Matt, this channel is back, and Texas. As Texas fans, we try to not ever say that phrase. We're back, but this channel is back. I appreciate just being on here every week now for a while with you. This is a lot of fun. So let's just keep the ball rolling. And hey, since I've come on this show, not going to put out there, not going to say it, but Texas hasn't lost since, so we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But this game has a lot of that 2023 Alabama game vibes coming into it. Now, granted, Alabama was a lot earlier back then, and it was a non-con game that basically was, it wasn't going to kill you, but it wasn't going to help you, but it was going to really help you out, but wasn't going to kill you if we lost it. This situation, though, is a little bit more serious in my opinion, because if you lose this game, we have now seen with how Texas Tech and BYU played out that we probably go down into about around 13 in the CFP rankings is how I'm looking at it. Maybe drop 2 or 3 spots. Oklahoma probably jumps us up to 10 while we go down. And it's going to be a real tough battle. Like I said in the last episode, I think if you lose to Georgia but beat A&M, that's a 9-3 Texas team that doesn't make it in the playoffs just because of how things ship out. It requires a lot more help from other teams beating up on each other and a lot more chaos for that to happen. So with that being said, I think that this is a must-win. This is a must-win game for Texas. You also need to get that sexy win on the road. Something we've had 2 attempts to get and just haven't gotten it. People will try to say Oklahoma was the good one, but really that's a neutral site. It's a rivalry game that doesn't count as on the road. And so we really need to get that extreme hostile environment win. The horseshoe in Columbus would have been a great way to tell the nation, this is Texas. Florida in the swamp would have probably been pretty good. Pre-Billy Napier getting released and all that other stuff. Now it kind of would have not been that way, but a win in Athens, I think, silences a lot of critics and gets us that really attractive win. And plus, it's the stepping stone. This Texas team wants to talk about being in charge of their own destiny and going forward and all their goals in front of them. It starts with beating Georgia. You got to get over and quell the rumors of Sarkisian having a Kirby or Georgia problem, because look what is happening to Georgia right now. Kirby has an Alabama problem, and that's what's causing a lot of his criticisms going forward. Sarkisian does not need that type of pressure, and I think that's the beginning of when you start seeing a decline. So Sark really needs to win this one, and losing 3 straight to Georgia would just be a total morale killer, I think, for the program. But you got to keep stacking these wins up and on each other. What stops a Texas team going to the SEC title game if they beat Georgia, they beat Arkansas, and they even beat A&M? That would be quite impressive. Also, just avenging the SEC championship game last year, with that potentially even being on the horizon and staying in that number 10, if not working our way up higher into the CFP, getting maybe hopefully a more favorable matchup would be great. But at the end of the day, just to really quell the whole Georgia has Texas's number, we got to win this game. I think we just got to win this game. If we lose this game, we're going to know our plans for Christmas pretty quickly. I think we go to the Citrus Bowl. I don't think we make the CFP. If we do win this game, it's another week of us holding off on planning anything in December because you don't know what's going to happen with the playoff situation. But this is a must win. This is a must win. What about you? What do you think about this?
I agree. It's a must win. This is a major milestone game for Texas and Sark. We've talked about it ad nauseum that the narrative is Texas can't beat Georgia, Texas can't win the big game, Texas sucks, Arch sucks. And you fought and scrapped to get to 7-2, to have 3 games left in the season where everything's on the table. It hasn't always been pretty, but you made it here. The team's getting better, offensive line's improving, Arch is improving, and you have a primetime matchup against the boogeyman in their house. And while Georgia's been really good this year, they're getting better week to week, just like us. And they're coming off a good win against Hail State. They still don't look like the 2022-2021 Georgia Bulldogs. They're vulnerable. We're vulnerable too. But I think on a if you even the playing, like I feel like it's a pretty even playing field. It's really about who executes better, who's more physical, because they've out physicaled us in the trenches the last 2 matchups for the most part. And I think it's a winnable game. I truly believe that. And yeah, if you want to beat the champ, you have to beat the champ, and this is a prime opportunity. And I think Sark really wants this game. Obviously, he really wants it, but I feel like Sark really needs this game because you've kind of lost that stature atop the SEC in a lot of ways. We come in and kind of run the conference right out the gate. Run through it. Besides Georgia, and this year A&M's hot. OU's up in the race now. Bama's up there. Ole Miss up there. It's a lot of there's a lot of there's a lot of clutter at the top now. So I think this is kind of your a statement game to say Texas is here and Texas is not going anywhere. And if Texas wins this game, you're not only talking about Texas being a playoff team, you're talking about a Texas team that down the stretch is getting hot and can win a national championship potentially if it continues to roll. So this game opens up everything, and I guess I'll talk about it now. Based on the playoff rankings that are coming out week to week, they just dropped earlier today. Texas moved up to 10, but looking around us, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us. Even I know you don't want to hear this, Kyle. Even if we lose to A&M, but win this game, beat Arkansas, of course, I think there'll be a chance to get in. So this game, in my eyes, is our Super Bowl, and I think we're the more desperate team. So I hope we show up and play like it. All the teams heard over the past 365 days is that Georgia just owns Texas. They're more physical. Kirby owns Sark. So I hope that we come out violent and mad and just bring the fight to them because we need this game more than Georgia needs this game. And there's no reason for us not to be the aggressors on Saturday.
Absolutely, Matt. Like I want to take what you said. What you said a couple things ago was amazing. There's a lot of clutter at the top right now. There's so many good teams among the SEC that Texas has almost kind of lost a little bit of that momentum. It's the same thing that we're seeing with ASU and Arizona State over in the Big 12 right now. Same thing. They came in last year. They had Scatterbo. They had all that. And they were hot. They won the Big 12. They were the representative. Now looking at this year, that's kind of cooling down for them. That hype around them isn't there. They're losing. They've lost a game to Mississippi State, and then they lost an untimely game now about a week ago. So their playoff hopes are basically dead, if not on life support right now for them. It's the same thing here. Congratulations, though. The SEC as of today has 5 teams in the playoff. That's great and all, but as you can see, Texas is gonna play 2 of those teams. We're gonna play A&M. We're gonna play Georgia. We just do not see a conference getting 5 good teams into the playoffs. Yes, the G5 school, there's only one. It's USF. That is a total. I'm sorry, they're going to get shellacked. They're going to get killed. But then having your Big 12 champion, which as of right now looks like Texas Tech, they could stand a chance. Miami, they could stand a chance. Having Notre Dame in there because it's Notre Dame and their whole schedule. Yes, it's a kind of a buzzkill, but you can kind of see Notre Dame doing good. It's very tight. A lot of these teams and that you see in the bracket and these higher seedings do have a kind of a cakewalk for the rest of the season. It's going to be tough. That's why we saw with BYU dropping 5 spots after losing to Texas Tech. They're now clean out of the situation. They dropped they're in one of the last teams out. Or one of the first teams out situation with Oklahoma. If we lose this game, I think we go down from 10 to 13. Oklahoma moves up, but now we're stuck in this little holding pattern for a while, probably at 11 as the first team out again. And we're having to wait and hope to God that Venables screws the pooch against Alabama, which is very possible of happening. But at the same time, I'd rather be in the driver's seat than having to hope. And that's what's going to happen. Like you said, a 9-3 Texas team that beat Georgia but maybe lost to A&M, they're in this. We talked about this last episode. Yes, I agree with you on that. We're in control up until the last week. I would have more of a fit in that situation that, wow, I can't, why did we not get in on selection day rather than a 9-3 Texas team that we know lost to Georgia but beat A&M, it's going to be tough. And I just think with those, we are now going to start seeing, like I talked about last time, these late season untimely, inconvenient losses are really going to hose a couple of these one conference loss teams. Some, unfortunately, we're not going to see one of the great SEC teams this year in the playoffs. Whether it's Georgia or Texas, I don't think Ole Miss is going to get left out of the dance. I do not think Alabama or Texas A&M are going to get left out of the dance. We're not going to see Texas or we're not going to see Georgia. And honestly, both these teams are prime playoff teams, but just because of how things are working out with the numbers, it's going to be tough, and someone's heart's going to be broken. I hope it's not us. So I think that just adds another layer to that. It's going to come down to the end of the year for that 4th spot. It's going to come down to Texas and Georgia. So we need to have the tiebreaker on them. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Every game now is must win. Nothing short of 10-2 is safe at this point. And so it's going to be tough. It's going to be scary. It's going to be really, really energy and emotionally sucking, but it's going to be fun to watch this whole time.
Oh yeah, that's why we love it. But let's hop into the game now. Uh,
Hmm.
Georgia, number 5 team in the country, they are only have one loss on the year to Alabama, and that was at home. That was a night game, and they're like 51-2 or something crazy like that in their last their last home games over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So that's pretty good. I mean, but we heard those similar numbers uh, going into Bryant Denny in 2023. And I know I'm keeping a harp back to that. I know they're different teams. I know it's not really related, but I mean, Ant Hill was on that team. Ethan Burke, they were making plays in that game. They had like a combined like 5 sacks together, Burke and Hill, and those guys are like still on our defense. So my point is, there's some of that lineage still there, and we've been a good road team under Sark, so that gives me some hope. We just have the one blemish in the swamp, so that gives me hope. But Georgia is a really good team. Gunnar Stockton is running the show there on offense, and say what you want, he's not the most sexy quarterback, but he's a freaking warrior back there. He's got good stats. He protects the ball. He's impossible to rattle. He's hard to really sack. They have a good offensive line. They're young, but their offensive line is pretty good, and they're huge. They're physical, as you would expect every year out of Georgia. But Gunnar Stockton is a smart quarterback. He doesn't turn the ball over, and he will diagnose blitzes and throw lasers to where we blitz from. That's kind of his calling card. He's good under pressure. And I mentioned that because last week against Vanderbilt, right before half, we had a stupid call after a timeout to send Ant Hill on an obvious blitz. And then it just left the guy in the slot. I think it was Stowers, just wide open, walks into the end zone. So you can't just, if you're going to blitz, this guy, Gunnar Stockton, is going to make you pay just like Pavia did. So we need to be really creative when we send pressure, but more importantly, we need to get pressure with 4. We need to have our defensive line manufacturing pressure so we can allocate more resources to the receivers downfield, the tight ends, Oscar Delp. They have a whole host of tight ends, but Lawson Lucky might be their best one. But he was banged up last week, but I'm sure he'll be fine. And then, of course, they have Zachariah Branch, the speedster at wide receiver. He reminds me of Xavier Worthy with the electricity that he plays with. He's a guy I wish we would have gotten in the portal. But yeah, they have playmakers, and then at running back, they have Chauncey Bowens and Nate Frazier, both really good backs. Both look like your typical Georgia backs. They're not quite Nick Chubb or DeAndre Swift, not quite that level in my opinion, but more than serviceable. But defensively, Georgia's been all over the place this year. They have a good D line, but their real their real calling card on defense is their linebacker core, led by I believe his name's Caleb Young or Caleb Allen, something like that. I don't even know his name, but he's a really good player. He's got similar numbers to Ant Hill, maybe even better numbers than Ant Hill, and they fly around. But surprisingly, their defense does not get a lot of pressure. Only have 8 sacks on the year, which is kind of noteworthy. And I guess a good sign for our offensive line because we don't have the best O line that that we would hope for. But they're gonna have to send pressure to get to Arch. Hopefully, I say that they're gonna have to send extra bodies. I say that, but last year we thought that too, and they got home a lot of the time on Quinn with only 4 people. So our O line needs to sack up and bring their A game. As far as running on these guys, I don't think we'll be able to run the ball on them much. Definitely not between the tackles. We're going to have to be an outside zone, bubble pass, stretch operation. I think it'll be stupid of Sark if he wants to be stubborn and prideful and run between the tackles. You can do it every now and then to keep him honest, but don't make it like a focal point of the game plan. Please, Sark. I'm begging you. You need to nickel and dime them on the edges and get your guys in space because in the middle they're tough, and that's probably the weakness of our team is the interior of our offensive line. We think we patched it up a little bit, but still, even so. So this is a matchup that Georgia doesn't turn the ball over. They they're pretty good on third down defense, and it's just a typical Kirby Smart team. They're well coached, they're physical, but they don't have that explosivity defensively, the havoc rate. They don't have that like you're accustomed to seeing. They don't, quite frankly, have the high end talent like they have had, in my opinion, on defense or on offense. But all around, they're a good football team, and going into their house at night in this spot is no easy task.
Yeah, that like I said, this is going to be our sexy win if this is on the road. If we pull this thing off, 7:30 in Athens. What an environment, That is prime time SEC big boy football. We're in the Grove. It's going to be tough, and that's one of those games that truly that Texas tough mentality that Sark has said the culture's been built on, it's going to come into question this game. And that's where you just can't quit. You're going to be down at some point in this game. Heck, we might be down the entire game up until the fourth quarter. You just can't quit. You got to keep going and got to keep pushing because toughness at the end of the day and the ability to continue to execute our plays and our scheme with the pressure being put onto us, that's what's going to help us, come out on the end of the day. But yeah, I want to talk about the stat you brought about Georgia only having about 7 to 8 sacks on this year so far. Yes, we agree. I think we talked about this last time that Georgia has have the ability to just bring forward just because of their size and kind of manhandle and slowly push the offensive line back, and they have that collapsing pocket sack. It worked out really well last year against Quinn because Quinn wasn't mobile. That was the one thing we realized. Quinn wasn't mobile, whether he was hiding that ankle injury longer than we thought to, my personal opinion being he's just not an athlete at all. He had a good ball, but he couldn't run to save his life, or he chose not to because he's kind of a wimp. But that's the difference between Quinn and Arch. Arch has that ability to move outside the pocket and run with some meaningful weight behind him. And we've seen that now, thankfully, over these 4 or 5 games from Florida to Vandy, that he's not that at least Arch now isn't afraid that if he's getting to the outside of the pocket, he's not going to continue to hold behind the line of scrimmage, hold the ball until maybe someone's open last second for a 5 yard sideline out route type thing. He'll turn it up, he'll tuck it and run, and that's a good thing. I think that's going to really help get around this slower collapsing Georgia defensive line because that's the mode that they're running for. That's really Georgia's mode is I call it the anaconda. It's a slow constriction to where you suffocate out your offense. And I think that's what Georgia's really good at. Yes, the linebackers are going to just totally hound our run game. We're going to have to beat them to the sides. We're going to have to make them work laterally. You're right. I just do not think the run game is going to be effective early. The time the run game is going to be effective is when, if we are lucky, in the fourth quarter we have the lead and it's time for us to start just turning first downs to run the clock out type of situation. That's the only time I could see this offensive line, just with how good the Georgia front seven is, being able to start running. Is we've already broken their will and their spirit at this point. But with that all being said, it is going to be pinnacle that we get some of these injured guys back. I think they're already talking about rumoring Taft to potentially be back for this game. The secondary really is going to need to hammer down in disguising their coverages to make sure that, number one, we're not giving up anything just blatantly obvious, like what happened in Vanderbilt, just blatant busts. But we need to really hide and disguise, maybe do that everyone up on the line and drop back at the snap of the ball. It's going to be a lot of pillar number three, misdirection on the defensive and offensive side. We're really going to have to show off that Sarkisian play calling to just give us that little bit of separation via smart play calls, misdirection, having the defense chase something with their eyes that they're not supposed to. We're going to need to put out a lot of eye candy out there, maybe a lot of pre-snap motions and stuff like that on offense to really just test the alignments of these and the discipline of this Georgia defense, while at the same time defensively we just have to make sure that we're the cat in this obvious operation. We're not giving away our signals. We're not, blowing our coverage by just standing somewhere where we're not supposed to, or we're giving it away and everything. Because, like you said, Gunnar Stockton is a smart quarterback, and we have seen him dice people up with his arm. We need to do that same thing that what George is doing, collapsing the pocket, getting hands in his face, and forcing him to, use his different arm angles or throw with hands in his face, because that's how we're going to get a shorter guy like Gunnar Stockton inaccurate, and that's how we help our DBs in this situation. But it's going to be a real test for them because this is going to be the best, I think, passing attack we're going to see in a while. And number two, our front seven has unfortunately been bullied the past out of the three times that they've seen a decent or strong, quote unquote, strong defensive front. We've lost. We've lost Ohio State again. You have our defensive lineman with foot in the ground and two guys on an Ohio State double team just pushing him like a plow. That's bad. Florida, Florida's Florida. We can all talk about how we just got totally manhandled by them for that loss, and then we bounce back and get a good win against Oklahoma. But really, everyone else after that hasn't had a very strong front seven. This is going to be a good test to really test out that Texas tough and see if we can finally outmuscle someone, because that's what this is going to be. So this is a real big test for everyone. I don't like having to put it on our front seven for defense, and I sure as heck do not like trying to test our offensive line with this, because we might be hot, we might have done some good things, but it's like we said, that ugly play can always rear its head. And unfortunately, this offense has still been a little bit too inconsistent for my liking. But hey, Baker's proven me wrong once this season. He almost proved me wrong again during Vandy. He got one penalty, maybe two. So, 50-50. But this is a chance for them to prove me wrong. This is a chance for Texas to really show its strength and character as an offensive line. But at the same time, truly, if you can establish some form of screen game in this one, I think we can win. And then if you can just get us the decent 3 yards of carry on offense, then I think that's how you win this. That's how you'll win this game.
Yeah, I'd be happy with 3 yards a carry, but I want to reiterate that if the run's not there, I want Sark to go full air raid like he does when we're down, and
Mhm.
and test those DBs and get the ball out in the perimeter. But this game is it's an Arch Manning game. It is. Arch has gotten better every week, and the haters are kind of quieting down. He's looking more composed, making reads, being more accurate. He's hitting the layups, and then he's hitting the sexy throws too. And he's got a great pocket presence. And quite frankly, last week against Vanderbilt, he didn't even need to use his legs much to navigate the pocket. The pocket was that clean, and the ball was moving out so fast. So those are great developments, and we need to build on that. Georgia's defense, they're I expect them to shut the run down, but they are susceptible to the pass. So this could be a good opportunity for Arch to have a showcase statement game, the ultimate eye test game for Arch, and really just kind of explode. And Arch hasn't ran much the past couple of weeks, or specifically against Vanderbilt. He had like one rush coming off the concussion. So I think you're gonna have Arch run at least 5 to 10 times this game. Um, you might need him on some zone reads, keepers. You got to pull it, like did against OU when you have to have it. Keep that in your back pocket. And he's going to have to scramble and create and extend drives when everything's covered. He's got to run for that 3rd and 6 and get move the chains. So Arch needs to be um, be in his best mode on Saturday, and I trust him to. I'm trusting Arch more and more as the season progresses. He's been through wars. He started off the season with like a completely defective O line, and he was in the swamp and in the horseshoe, just running for his life. So, and it doesn't appear that he's been ruined by that. It appears that it's got him more poised now. So. It actually appears to be benefiting him in the long term now that it's kind of slowing down for him. So that's a great development. But switching to um, our defensive side against their offenses, I expect our defense to be able to stop their run game pretty I'm pretty confident that we'll have some success with that. The thing about that is, I don't want to stop them too much in the run game where then they just start going air raid on our secondary because I don't know. Having McDonald and Taftback is huge, and you can't understate how massive that is. It could, I hope, just fix everything, and then a couple scheme adjustments, and they're not the most explosive offense passing wise. They have good players, but they don't want to throw it all over the field like Tennessee does or Hail State. They want to have that balance. They want to have a rushing attack. They want to run the quarterback on those zone reads. They want to be Georgia. They don't want to just open it up. So I don't want to give them a reason just to go full air raid, which sounds stupid. Like don't give them rushing yards for free. But my point is, I hope it doesn't come back to bite us where we're just money against the run and then just giving up explosive 10-yard chunks, 10-yard, 15-yard chunks through the air because I could see that happening. So I hope our defense, and this is a Dwayne Aquina game, man. You got to show us that you got one more bullet left in your holster, man, because the secondary was so good last year. It's so good. And I know you lose Jade and Makuba, but man, you got plenty of talent back there. You got to shuffle it around, put Kate Phillips at corner, get Gilbo back to star, put McDonald and Taff on the back end. Manny Muhammad's a good player for us, so you gotta come up with something, Aquino. I'm looking at you, and we need to have the best secondary performance that we've had of the season on Saturday. If you do that, I think you have a great chance to win. You don't want them to tee off on you going deep with guys like Zachariah Branch, Dylan Bell. But yeah, so last thing I'll say about our defense against their offense is Colin Simmons. This is a Colin Simmons game. We talked about we need to get home with 4. We need to make Stockton. You're not going to really rattle him, but you need to make him uncomfortable and make him feel sped up because Colin Simmons is in his face. Colin Simmons has been coming on more and more. He's got like 7 sacks in SEC play, like leading the country. And he completely took over that Vanderbilt game. Same with Ethan Burke. Those two guys, both of them, they need to have legacy games and make Stockton just really be uncomfortable back there. And he's going to make plays. He's going to evade. It's going to be a frustrating 3rd and 8. He's going to get to the edge and convert a first down. That's going to happen. But our defense needs to really just remain poised whenever those things happen because they're a good team. They're a championship level, playoff level team. So that's going to happen. But more often than not, we need to be getting them off schedule and making Gunnar Stockton uncomfortable. And last thing, offensively on the opening script, the last 2 weeks it's been that little dink to Wingo, and he pretty much scores 70 yards every time. And the obvious thing is fake the dink and then do the fake block and then go deep to DeAndre Moore. My thing is, I think you do the double pass again with a little more depth and then just have DeAndre Moore block for a second, then release, and then Wingo make the throw this time, unlike in the Florida game. First play, double pass, Wingo to DeAndre Moore, 75-yard touchdown, get a lead, and then let our defense tee off on Gunnar Stockton.
Matt, God bless your boots on the ground, because you know, uh, I don't know what you got in that Arctic right there that you're drinking, but I'm gonna do the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid, and the opening drive. I like where you're going with this. The imagination is great. And yes, I agree with you. We have to score on the opening drive. I'm not saying it's a one play score like Vandy, but we have to put points on the board and first in this game. We have to strike first. You're right. The defense has to have a legacy game. Ethan Burke and Simmons. But like I said, it's not just rushing him and speeding him up. It's putting hands in his face. We have to put obstacles in the air to where he's not have where instead he has his windows are condensed. Okay? It needs to not just be here vertical window, his horizontal windows need to be condensed as well, because he needs to be having to throw through obstacles. Because yes, his receivers are deadly, they're sneaky good, but if you have it to where he has to place the ball into an even smaller window to where it messes up the timing of the ball and the release to the receiver, that's how we're going to win and defend the passing game. I agree, Akina needs to have his guys on point, and the DBs do need to be doing their job. But with Collins, Simmons, and Burke, it needs to be what Russell Maryland, star Super Bowl defensive tackle for the Dallas Cowboys and Miami Hurricanes. He gave me a little seminar back in the day about his whole style and how he did so well and he became so great was the penetrate and wait method. He got in, he broke through the thing, and he slowly collapsed it back on him. He has to contain him because, as we've seen, Gunnar Stockton, sneaky good dual threat guy who can run and loves to break the pocket. But if we can just collapse it in on him, force him to run up into Hill Jr. and all those guys and have to flee stepping up into the pocket. That's where our defense is going to have that suffocating anaconda thing and feeling, and that's how we're going to also control the clock. So you're right. I believe Burke, I believe Simmons need to have legacy games, but I also have a sneaky feeling McDonald is going to be the one who comes off injury and comes back and has a game in the secondary. I wouldn't be surprised that if you put the bet for player performance that it's McDonald on Texas getting the pick, not Taff. And then finally, this is the one last thing I like to always put up with the offense. Yes, I'm going to take your play. I'm going to simplify it down. We're just going to I say we run a screen. We run a double screen with Moore on one side and Niblet on the other. And we'll just throw whichever one they decide to not cover, it's the one we throw it to. And I hope they cover Moore and not cover Niblet, because that will work. That will be the score. That's the dagger. I think it has to be a screen to Niblet or Moore on play 4 or 5. We have to get one first down, though, first before we run that screen. That's all I got to say. And I think it has to go to Niblet. If I was to say that's how we get our score. But hey, the double pass is it's always sexy, but it needs a lot of time. And we have, as our offensive line has shown, it does not give us much time. So love the effort, but we got to know the personnel.
Yeah, it's kind of ambitious to do on the first play. Maybe if you lull them to sleep in the second quarter, it'll be there. But yeah, it's probably really stupid.
If anything, let's do the flare pass. But instead, we'll send both Wingo and Moore, and then we'll let Arch make the read. I think that'd be a good way to do it instead. Let's do a double. Let's start in the middle of the field and let's do a double flare out. And whichever one you choose, that's the one you go to. And if none of them open, you sail that sucker into the third deck of the fans. That's how you open. That's the first play of the game. But this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be tough. It is about, I think out of the 4 pillars of winning football in life, 2 of them, that is a dogfight to win. You got to run the dang ball. That's going to be tough for both teams. It's going to be super tough. That's more of whoever is able to run the ball is going to win the game. Step up in the pocket. I don't think Arch needs to step up into this pocket. Again, it's that collapsing anaconda defense that Georgia is known for. We have to play the same. The way you beat Georgia is play like Georgia, and that's a tall order for us. But we have the people on defense to do that. So we have to just slowly collapse it in on them. And so if that's the case, you can't step up into that. If this is going to be one of those, can you just evade in the pocket? I think Arch is a lot more mobile than Gunner, and Arch is a lot more mobile than Quinn. So I think being able to break the pockets in our advantage. The misdirection, that is huge. I think we are pinnacle. We
Yeah.
have to win the
It
misdirection game.
it worked great in Atlanta. We were moving the ball through the air a lot because of misdirection, targets of misdirection.
Mhm.
So I agree. I agree.
And it's not because this Georgia defense doesn't know. It's because they're so sound in the misdirection that it's going to the technical. Okay, Moore's planted at 10 yards, and then he breaks away, and he does a precision break. Now the DB's also having to turn his hip, flip his hips, get back into and reset himself to cover Moore or Wingo. That's where the mixed direction is. It's not that it's just it gives us just enough of a hesitation that it allows us to get a yard of separation. That's where the misdirection is. We're not going to see the big bust, the big busted coverage. Oh, he came out scot free. It's going to be, oh, that juke, that little second step, that little move that little shimmy he gave him just enough yards to get that separation to go maybe make that one-handed snag that's just out of reach. That's what this mixed direction is going to do for us. And then, of course, let your nuts hang. Got to stay cool in this situation. Personally, now I will say this: Sark is 22-1 coming out of the bye. We only our one loss was to Florida this year. I'm throwing the Florida game out the window. We are 22-0 coming off a bye, and so this is a time for us to be successful with it. We have to win because we got 2 weeks to look at Georgia. And it is time for us to just get over the bulldog hump. We have to. And that is, I think there's just more for us to win. And there's more for us to win and go achieve. And it's a lot harder of a loss that our team's going to play more inspired. I'll just leave you with this last little nugget for all my sports bettors out there. All right. I'm not telling you this is a guaranteed thing. I'm telling you this is my strategy on Saturday, real time. If Texas goes to overtime with Georgia or forces OT, double down on Texas. Double, triple, quadruple, whatever, any money you have left at the end of the day, put it all on Texas because Texas wins in overtime. This Texas team has if I was to say we've shed anything this season, it's that the Texas in overtime is deadly. Texas, I was there back in 2019, 2018 when Texas was used to be horrendous in overtime. Case in point, Will Greer in West Virginia ruined one of my last senior year football seasons by taking us to OT. You know, countless times in Oklahoma State and all those times going to OT. Texas has had an OT problem. We've done it twice this season alone. Granted, it's in Starkville and it's in Lexington, but going to OT in the SEC and winning in the fashion that we do, that builds character, that builds poise. Even if Georgia's gone to OT before in the past and these guys have seen OT play, they just do not have the same gall as our guys do. So if Texas forces an overtime with Georgia, double down on Texas, we will win the game.
I agree, but let's just win it in regulation. How about that? How about that? I can't take a third overtime game. I can't do it, man. It's taking years off of me. So but yeah, that's a great rule of thumb. We do look money in overtime and very clutch, which gives me some confidence in this team in this spot. Okay, last thing I want to add before we get into predictions, really two things is this game, special teams, and you brought up Ryan Niblett. Special teams is very important because Georgia's special teams are phenomenal, the gold standard of college football. They have an NFL punter who will boom the crap out of the ball. So, if we're able to back them up in their own territory where they're punting, there should be some return opportunities for Ryan Niblett because he's going to outkick his coverage a lot of the time, and there's going to be some room to work. So that can be huge for us. get Ryan Niblett loose on a couple punt returns. That'd be awesome. And then just I'm thinking back to last year. Uh, that game in Atlanta in the SEC championship swung. We were getting momentum back, getting control of the game, and then they whipped out that fake punt to really just flip momentum back in their favor, where they're able to save that game ultimately. So situational special teams, being that's what kind of what Kirby Smart's notorious for is having these ballsy special team fake punts, fake kicks, in critical moments, and more often than not, he usually converts them. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to one up them. Probably won't win the special teams battle against them, but at least make it a push. Mason Shipley, you got to hit your field goals this week. We can't have a Burt Auburn situation where he basically lost us the game last year in Atlanta. We got to get, even if it's a 50-yarder, you got to hit it. Like, we cannot leave points on the board in a game with margins this tight. And yeah, that's really my main thing. They have a really good field goal kicker. He's been there for, it seems like, 100,000 years. He doesn't miss field goals. So, like I'm saying, they'll probably just aim for a push in the special teams and be ready for Kirby Smart to have some wild stuff dialed up. But that's pretty much it for my takes on the game. I guess we can dive into predictions unless you have anything else, Kyle. I'll pass it to you. You can take it where you want, or we can go straight into predictions. What are you thinking about prediction wise on Saturday?
Ooh, okay. So based off what you said, yes, Burt Auburn, I hate you. You lost me a lot of money. A lot of Texas fans hate you. We got the one thing that we needed that we wanted last year that could have won the game. Yes, special teams, don't ever forget about them. I just don't want to see Stark go for like a 52 or 53. Get it within like 45 because you run into the hole if he misses it. There's the position that Georgia gets it. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, but I will say this: I'm going to give a Josh Pateism. I know you don't like it, but I'm going to do it because I got to I got to cover all my bases this week. I am going to say Texas wins and beats Georgia because Texas needs it more. And I'd rather go down with my team than say Texas isn't winning and somehow they prove me wrong. But I'm going to go with my team. Texas wins, and it's going to be a field goal. So there's my shout out to Shipley. It's going to be a field goal. That's how you win. Texas -3.
Okay. I like it. I like it. You know, I have a weird confidence about this game. I can't really explain it. I don't know if I even should. Maybe I'm just an irrational Texas fan, but really this season, I haven't been this way. I picked us to lose in Hale State. I wasn't feeling great about that Kentucky game. The OU game, I had confidence because of the rivalry, but the Florida game I felt weird about. But this game I feel weirdly good because, like you said, Texas needs it more. And historically, Texas in this spot, a true road underdog against a big program, we're good in this. That Florida game doesn't count. Is this the Florida game? That's a snooze fest game against a crappy team before Red River. That's a trap game in a hostile environment. It's that you'll excuse. Not you don't excuse it, but that's a whole different dynamic than this game where it's the Georgia Bulldogs. You're the underdog. It's prime time, and everybody and their mother's watching this game, and you have to have it. And so I think this is a spot that Texas has played well. And you think of Ann Arbor last year, going to Kyle Field last year, going to Tuscaloosa, of course, in 23. And I think this game parallels a lot with that. In Georgia, as good as they are, they haven't they haven't been that machine, and I continue to believe that. Neither have we. We're no machine either. But I think we're a lot more close to the same outfit than people realize. And I think Texas puts together their best their best win of the year on Saturday. I think Texas gets it done. I think it's going to be it's going to start off low scoring, but I think in the second half it kind of opens up. Very similar to that Bama game last year or two years ago. I'm going to go Texas 37, Georgia 31. And I did predict the correct score of that Bama game 2 years ago, 34-24. I called it on the money. People thought I was crazy. So hopefully history repeats itself. And I am going to this game with the same exact crew, the Iron Spikes boys, that I was at We were up there in the upper decks of Bryant Denny when A.D. Mitchell caught that game-winning touchdown and blew his kiss goodbye to the Bama fans. We were in that stadium. We got the same crew back together, and history's going to repeat itself. Texas wins this game, and chaos in the SEC ensues, and everything's back on the table for Texas.
Two things. Number one, in the blatantly obvious thing, we've talked about it. We've talked about this factor before with Ohio State. Texas is about to go to Ohio State, and they remember the CFP, and they're ready to go. This game was circled because it's a revenge game, and we lost that game. But you know what? And I haven't heard the specialists. I haven't heard Joel Klatt. I haven't heard Bussin' with the Boys. I haven't even heard ESPN, Herb Street, or anyone talk about this. Texas lost to Georgia twice and won for an SEC title game. This 100% is a revenge game for Texas. So you have to put that factor in there. This team is going to be spicy. They are pissed. They do not like Georgia. We do not like Georgia. There's the old heads like me that get to say, back in my day when I graduated in 2019, we beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. There's still some of those people around the 40 acres that are probably whispering that in the player's ear, like, "Hey, come on, guys, you lost to Georgia twice. Back in my day, we beat them. So you got to do what's right. This is a revenge game for Texas." And number two, I love the fact you're going with my boys, Derek and Trent. Shout out to Diddley, Derek, De La Garza, and Trill Trent Earnhardt. My two spikes pledge bros. These are my rookie bros. I've defended these guys. I love the fact that you're going with them, and that makes me a whole heck of a lot more confident that you're bringing the same crew nose, the three of y'all for that game way back. So I trust that alone might get you the score. I think it's going to be 34 though. I just don't know, man. I really think it's going to come down to a field goal. I really do. I think it's going to come down to special teams again. And this time we bought the kicker that we needed. So you're right. But with all that still being said, all that really does is just flip us. I think it really just flips us at this point. I think Georgia goes down to 11 and becomes the first team out, and they'll probably push Oklahoma down from 11 to 12. But that's really it. It's not going to be a massive change. It will be a big drop for Georgia. But as we've seen, that late loss, especially it being a bigger upset, but not really, because everyone kind of knew Texas is the hot team. You're going to see the committee, though. I think they're going to try and give Georgia some grace, but at the same time, I just don't think, like I said in the beginning of the show, I just do not think that Georgia, if they're at the 11th spot, gets in. I just don't. I don't think they're going to put five SEC teams in the playoffs. So, like I said, this is the tiebreaker we need to win, and so it's going to be tough. I don't think we move up to five. I think we move up to like seven.
We
I'll
jumped
say
Notre Dame for sure, maybe Oregon, probably Oregon, but maybe Texas Tech. Yeah, at seven at best, I would
I'd
say.
say seven. I don't think they do. I think they're gonna. This is my thing, and I hate this. And this is a good way for us to segue into the CFP bracket and stuff. I just, Tech only moved up one spot at the end of the day after beating BYU, while BYU only dropped 5 spots. Granted, it was an upset, and as you can see, an upset, even though it was only a one place upset, dropped to five. Now, I see four Big Ten teams and I see four big or four SEC teams getting in. That's how I look at it. I really that's the only time I can see that this becomes a competitive thing. Because as a fan too, I'm looking at the CFP as like I want to just be entertained with good games. The fact now, look at this. Look who the flavor of the G5 is this week. Last week it was Memphis. Now who is it? Southern Florida and Ghoulish. But I will say that's a good team. That's a sneaky good team. And I actually would like to see them. I would say they have a better shot at making at least winning the first round than Memphis or Boise State is this USF team. I really do. So I think the G5, if you send Southern Florida, that's a good pick. I think that needs to stay there. And where they are in the bracket is where they need to stay. That's where you put them. Keep them right there and keep it USF for the next 4 weeks, and I'm okay with that. That's our G5 squad.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I agree. I think if we win this game, I don't know if we'll move up past seven or maybe 6 at best if we're lucky. But I think what it does is it kind of buys you, like a hedge against if you lose to A&M, you're not going to fall back that far. It's kind of like a feather in your cap where I agree with you. If you win this game, even if assuming you don't get blown out by A&M, assuming you beat Arkansas, I think you're in a great position to be in. When you see Miami in the field, and especially if someone like Notre Dame was to drop a game, like or someone like Alabama, or just someone that's like a given, that's kind of on the fringe. Oregon, um, Vanderbilt. So yeah, I think it just buys you a lot of leeway and goes a long way. But playoffs aside, man, this one's for pride. I'm so tired of Kirby Smart. He's a great coach. I don't think he's a bad guy, but he's just so annoying, man. His like his whole post game interview in DKR last year, whenever they won that game, it's like, golly, this guy, man, he's annoying, because he's beating us and he's not shy about it. And last year in that the whole narrative about last year's championship game, SC title game, was that Georgia just humbled us and destroyed us. Um, I don't know where that game went to overtime. We lost in overtime. We were winning most of that game. We outgained them like crazy, if I remember correctly. Texas was, yeah, we couldn't run the ball. So yeah, people remember that. But everything else, Texas was having its way a lot of that game. And I think people need to remember that. People just assume that Georgia owned Texas twice, like they did in DKR. But Texas, it took kind of heroics for Georgia to pull that game off in overtime. Texas, if Jalen Gilbo turns his head on that Jahdae Barron interception, Texas takes the lead with like a minute, 2 minutes left, and Texas probably wins that game. So I think Texas really settled in against Georgia and Atlanta, and I think people are kind of just not remembering how it actually went. They're just kind of lumping the DKR game into that one and just assuming that it's going to be the same thing. And I think Texas found some things that worked against Georgia, specifically, like you said, the misdirection and the passing game, and and I think we'll see some more of that Saturday. And but yeah, the playoff bracket's wild, man. It's wild. The matchups today that came out, obviously, it's not going to be these matchups down the line, but as of now, they're pretty spicy. You got Miami going to Lubbock, which would be awesome. Texas going to the Grove, and then USF going to Georgia, and there was one more. What was the other one? I'm blanking.
It's Notre Dame going to Oregon, to
Yeah,
Eugene.
that's super cool too. So those are all bangers.
These are bangers, and as it is right now, the winner of Texas Ole Miss would go play Indiana. I Now this is me being a fan and a Texas storyline, right? Like I'm writing the storyline for the national championship Texas Longhorns of 2025, 2026. And my national championship says this is here's how I look at it. We lose the rematch with Ohio State. You have a lot of questions coming out of that game and they don't get answered and you lose in Florida. But then you turn around, you knock off number 6 Oklahoma. You go win two back-to-back emotional emotional overtime wins and you finally get Texas back to where they kind of know what's going on with themselves. You then get to redeem Steve Sarkisian and his Kirby or Georgia curse and get that monkey off Sarkisian's back, and you get revenge for last year's BS. You then get to go and protect your home with Texas A&M. The first time that the Aggies walk in, you continue the dominance of the Lone Star Showdown. But then where I get into the playoffs is I think here's how I look at it. If Texas wins against Georgia, we'll go up to 9 or 8, I think is what I said. That, as of right now, has Ohio State winning out and staying number 1. If we're at 9 or 8, the winner of 9 and 8 plays Ohio State. So right now it says the Notre Dame Fighting Irish or Oregon Ducks are going to go play Ohio State. If Texas I want Texas to be the team that goes in and faces Ohio State after the bye. Ohio State's going to lose to Michigan, like I've said, so they'll go to 4. I think Ohio State goes to 4. That's the number 12 and number 5 team. That's right now USF and Georgia. If Texas beats A&M, the number 3 team will go up to 5. Then we'll go up to 5. So then it's 5 versus the 12. So it's Texas versus the G5. If it's South Florida, we're going to kill them. If it's any other G5, we're going to kill them. And then we'll go see number 4 Ohio State after they've just come from a loss from Michigan in Ann Arbor. And then they get to lose to the Texas team that they thought they owned. And we get revenge for that. It's a revenge party. That's how I see this team win a national championship. It has to be a revenge party, and that's how we get to the national championship. And we're going to need some help from Michigan.
I want no part of that. If we make it to the playoff, keep me away from Ohio State as long as I can be. And I don't believe Michigan's gonna beat Ohio State, dude. I know you're a Michigan guy, and I know we said this last year, but like Michigan didn't look that good last year either, so maybe. But I'm not as confident as you. I'm cheering for y'all. I'm cheering for y'all. Believe me, I hate Ohio State, but it's gonna be a tall task.
Yeah, and at the same time too, though, losing to now let's get back to planet Earth. You know what I talked about with if Texas loses to Georgia and beats A&M, we're gonna need some help from other teams. We're gonna need help then from number 4 Alabama to fend off OU, and that's it. And I personally think that Alabama going whenever they do see OU, I think that's where the magic stops. I just do. I think that's where the magic stops. I think OU has Alabama's number again this year. I think that's what's gonna make this playoff so much more fun. Is I'm calling it now that OU will upset Alabama and DeBoer. That's where I see that happening. I do not see Notre Dame losing a game. If they do, they're awful. If Notre Dame loses a game, they're out. They're done. There's no chance in God's green earth. Oregon has to beat USC, or USC has to upset Oregon. Oregon is the number 4 team in the Big Ten right now. So I don't know, man. I think the Ducks get it done against USC. I think they do. What do you think?
For sure, for sure. I don't buy USC as a contender. Oregon proved something to me winning at Iowa in that crappy
Hmm.
weather game. I think Oregon's a solid high floor team. I don't think they'll win much in the playoff, but I think they'll take care of USC, get them out of there, and it'll come down to Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana, and then who would be the fifth in that scenario? There's no fifth.
The 5th team in the Big Ten?
Washington? There's
No, it's because right now it'd be Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, US. It's right now it's USC and Michigan. That's how it is because since Iowa lost, Iowa's dropped out now because of record. So now that's how the power ranking is. Oregon's at 3. USC has the tiebreaker over Michigan, so that's why USC's above Michigan. But if SC loses to Oregon, Oregon will drop below Michigan because of the amount of losses in conference. They'll have 2, while Michigan still only has 1. So that will help them. Um, And then they're saying right now that they think Miami's going to win the ACC championship. Do you? I think so. I think that's kind of written in the stars. I don't
yeah,
see them
for sure, but I don't know how they were projected in the bracket is like the highest, but
11.
but they don't control their own destiny from my understanding. They're like 3 or 4 games, like 3 other teams that are ahead of them. Georgia Tech, Virginia's ahead of them,
Hmm.
Duke's ahead of them, I want to say. So they don't have a clear path. So I don't know how that's going to work out because if Miami's the highest ranked team in the ACC, but Duke wins the ACC title, like what do you do then? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Miami's earned enough brownie points to get an at-large if you're going to have to give a spot to Duke and they don't even make the ACC title game. What do you think?
This is the craziest thing, dude. I think Duke could get it. I think Duke can win the ACC title game, but at the same time, Georgia Tech ends the season with Georgia. I think they could beat Georgia and that's how the ACC gets 2 teams in.
Yeah.
Cuz you'd have Georgia Tech with only 1 loss in conference, but then they beat a non-con power 10 team in SEC who is undisputably the fifth team in the SEC after Texas beats them. You know, I think that's how the ACC gets to. I think Georgia Tech gets in. That's how Georgia Tech gets in. I think Miami's in here because of a technicality. Because even me and you last week when we talked about it, we're like, Miami's basically dead in the water at 17. So how they jumped 6 spots from this win, I don't understand. You know, how does BYU losing to Tech help Miami? That made no sense to that. This makes no sense to me because as of right now, it has Miami at 11 versus number 6 Texas Tech to play number 3 A&M. So I just don't think I just don't think Miami's the team though you put in there at 11. I think it's Duke. I would say it's Duke.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I don't trust Miami to even win out. I don't know what the rest of their schedule is, but I know Cristobal is notorious for finding ways to just choke, no matter how good a team you may have. And yeah, they jumped up a lot, mainly because Louisville lost this past
Hmm.
Cal, and they were kind of boxing them out because they had the head-to-head on Miami. So Louisville
Oh,
them,
that's I
and
forget
then
about Louisville.
it
Yeah.
freed up Miami to move up. So they're kind of in that same tier as us now, you know, a 10 through 12 or whatever. But
Hmm.
it'd be not. I keep saying it. It'd be nice to see Notre Dame lose this week. They got Pitt at Pitt. Pitt's apparently pretty good. I don't know. They're ranked like 23. I haven't watched a single snap of Pitt football this season, but if they could help us out by knocking out the Irish, free up a spot, that'd be very nice.
Have you seen this NIT bracket for the college football playoffs put out by Bussin' with the Boys? It is
No.
so it is so funny. It's great. This is great. I think these are some great games as of right now. JMU and USC in the first round.
Yeah.
uh, Tennessee versus Virginia. That actually is a good game. Pitt versus Michigan. Michigan wipes the floor with them in this. And then Louisville, Cincinnati. It's not bad.
Yeah.
These are good games. And that's the crazy thing that even though that these teams are considered like not have a lot of these teams still, outside of USC, Michigan, even really Virginia and Utah, they have because Utah's in here too as a team with a bye. These are 3 teams, if not 4 teams that there's also Vandy in here too. I say there's about 4 teams in here that could 4 or 5 that could really control their own destiny. That can still control their destiny, but just need only a minor bit of help from others. I easily think that if Texas drops both A&M and Georgia, Vandy can circumvent OU somehow because OU is going to lose to Alabama and Vandy just has to win out. And I believe that all Vandy has to do is beat Tennessee at the end of the year. And by that point, the Heupel team is either in chaos or they are struggling, and this is their way limping into the playoffs. So I think Vandy is easily could still get in there somehow, but it will require a total collapse by us at this point,
Yeah,
which makes me very happy.
we're boxing them out. But yeah, they have a clear path to 10-2, and that becomes an argument, I guess, if we go to 9-3, and it's Vandy at 10-2 because they got a big win against Auburn barely this past weekend, and they got Kentucky, who's kind of hot now with Cutter Bowley. So that's not a give me necessarily. I think it's a home game, but then they go to Neyland. So yeah, if they can win those two, they'll have a good shot, depending on chaos of getting in there. But I do think that they're going to have that Vanderbilt stigma where they're going to be kind of at the back of the line of the cluster. If there's a bunch of 10-2 teams, and then us at 9-3 potentially, I think it would get a little messy. I'm glad we have the head-to-head on them. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, let's give credit where credit's due to this Vandy team. We've played them. They've played very good against us these past 2 times. But what do you think, man? I kind of want to kind of jump off the deep end with this question. But what do you think? Is Vandy? Is this it? Do you think they're going to go back to being Vandy of old, or do you think that this can be sustained for a while for them? Because truly, if Texas, Texas, think it's kind of one of those things where we're thankful we don't have to play Vandy next year. We don't get to see them for 2 years, and then we're back in Nash. We're back in Nashville, which means me and you got to link up for that one again. Woo, so much fun. But can Vandy continue this reign of dominance in the SEC? Because if that's the case, I much rather like to see Vandy be that, you know, be that number 4, number 5 team than LSU or Ole Miss and all those teams that we have just totally let us down.
Yeah, I think as long as Clark Lee stays, assuming he stays, he's a Vandy grad, that they'll be a regular team in the SEC, kind of like that A&M Kentucky role, uh, where they're always like how Kentucky was over the little span they had with Mike Stoops at his height, where they're just like a seven-ish win team a year, and they're just like dangerous, not a super high ceiling. So I can see them having a role like that, where they're kind of like Missouri right now. You know, like you don't treat them as a threat necessarily to win it all, but they're a team you have to prep for because they can pull an upset and compete every given Saturday. But
Yeah, man, I'm looking at I mean you talked about this last year, and it's unfortunately it isn't too relevant. It's not helping the argument this year, but you look at teams like SMU, you look at teams at Vandy, like SMU last year made a surprise appearance in the CFP in the expansion because the Dallas boosters turned SMU around pretty well. Granted, this year has probably been a little bit of a letdown for them, and them not even being able to even attempt to run or competing for an ACC title to be in the hunt is a little disappointing for them, per my inside sources. But look at Vandy. 2 years, and they went from 7-6 last year to now doing this. They're in control of their destiny and stuff like that. And then we don't see them losing out. We don't. If the only loss, if any, would be the last game of the year at Tennessee during rivalry week. And that's a really tough team that we used to always. And even then, it's like it's possible for them to pull it out because we see lingering deficiencies with Tennessee, but do you think that we're going to start seeing more of these private school type universities be able to compete maybe throughout the years going forward in the CFP with this new with the NIL and stuff like that? Or was that just a one-off thing for last season?
no, for sure, we'll see more and more of it. It doesn't have to be a private school. It just has to be a school that has a couple really good donors behind it with some deep pockets. I mean, look at Texas Tech. But yeah, private schools would fall into that. You know, SMU's got a lot of money, TCU. Baylor's got some money. So yeah, for sure, I think that's going to be we're going to see a lot more teams just rise up and teams that we haven't really seen before. You know, yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, NIL's kind of leveled the playing field for everyone. So yeah, it's kind of nice, honestly. It's cool to see these new teams. What's new is seeing Texas Tech because they look like an actual national championship contender full of mercenaries. So it's cool to see how well it works. I thought there was kind of a cap on it. And they're very well could be, and they could be fool's gold and go to the playoff and get smoked by an SEC team. But they do look like the real deal through just buying players, mercenary style, and just paying ridiculous money. Paying way more than the market rate for these players. So yeah, it's definitely duplicatable. Is that a word? It's definitely gonna we're gonna see more and more of it as the years continue on.
Well, man, I think I hope so. It's good seeing these small schools, but it's yeah, you're right. Texas, as of right now, Texas Tech is to play Miami, and the winner of that goes and plays A&M, which would be like the worst quarterfinal game ever. Texas Tech versus Texas A&M. Oh my God, that would just be a horrible atmosphere, in my opinion. If the playoffs happen today, that's potentially a matchup. And guess what? Guess who the winner of that gets to go play? The winner of Texas versus Indiana, which I'm going to say Texas wins. So these two fools get to fight over a chance to come play Big Brother. That would be a heck of a storyline, though. When I would, hey, the team that we left to run the Big 12 finally runs the Big 12 in year two, and now gets to play the team that we're replacing in the SEC, basically, as the representative for Texas. Oh my God, it'd be great. But I would not want to see it. I'd hope Tech wins because I'd love to beat Tech one more time and be the person who ends their mercenary glory Cinderella story would be hilarious. But number two, I just wouldn't want to play A&M so close back to back. I just wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, too much stress. But yeah, no, that's a big storyline. Is just the state of Texas this year, especially if Texas finds their way in. Because I think Tech and A&M are pretty much locks.
Hmm.
If Texas takes care of business and gets in the CFP, yeah, so they're going to cross each other's paths. They're going to try to make those matchups in round one. Texas going to Lubbock or A&M going to or college. They're going to try to match us up in some capacity. So yeah, that'll be crazy and hopefully not too stressful, man. I can only take so many rivalry games, so many close games. So we'll see, man. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, man, it's a wild time. The expanded playoff, I was a hater of it when it was first announced, but it adds some spice to the season, that's for sure. It gives us a reason to stay hopeful at a championship aspirations and all that this late in the season with two losses. Back in the BCS era, it's pretty much just a wrap once you lose that game in the swamp. So it's fun, man. It's a lot of fun to, we're diagnosing all these scenarios, but it's the reality is none of this stuff's going to actually happen how it's projected right now. It's going to be way different by the time the dust settles, but a lot of these teams will be in the mix. It's just the matchups and the rankings will of course be different. But yeah, man, it's exciting. It's exciting to watch, and I can't wait to see. This weekend's going to change a lot of it. There's some big time matchups: OU, Bama, Texas, Georgia, Pitt, Notre Dame. So there's a lot of chaos that can ensue. TCU's, I think, hosting BYU. That seems like a spot where they could just knock them out. TCU could catch them, after a loss and just knock them out of the playoff altogether with a second straight loss. So a lot of chaos to ensue, and we'll see how it plays out.
Man, the name of the game is still just win, win, win. If you win and you win out, you're probably going to make it in, whether whether you're the fifth Big Ten team or the fourth SEC team. Because of the BYU loss, I think it's now mathematically almost like we said, unless something crazy happens in the ACC, like Georgia Tech upsetting Georgia, it should kind of just wipe out as 4-4, four SEC, four Big Ten, one G5, Notre Dame, one ACC, and one Big Ten and one Big 12 team, and I think that's really at the end of the day, that's all this field can really produce. I think that's the lineup you need to have to even have a decent playoff, because I just don't see any other teams from the ACC. I don't see, unless it's Georgia Tech does the magical Georgia Tech and, like I said, beats Georgia. Um, I just do not see any other teams in these conferences being even remotely competitive against what we see right now, because Alabama looks like an unstoppable killing machine. Same with Ohio State and Cignetti's Indiana. You know, those are the three teams that are gonna, I think, hold all the cards. Those are the three best teams in college football right now: Alabama, Ohio State, and Indiana. And it's now trying, okay, now the community just has to have the conversation of who can beat these three teams, if there is any of them. You know, I think Texas is up there. I think Michigan is up there. I think Oregon's up there. I just don't see Texas Tech doing it. I don't, but thank God they had to play A&M right now. Um, Old Miss could. I think Old Miss can, but it's going to be tough, man. These are some really. This season's going to really affect how scheduling happens, as well as just in general how teams are going to start approaching week to week preparations, sitting more guys, forcing people back from injury faster, and vice versa, because we're going to truly see some transparency here, I think, at the end of this playoff run.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone's reacting now to the new landscape, and yeah, the seasons are like 17 games long for some teams now, and it's a whole different approach. It's more of an NFL model. So yeah, it's going to all change. It's continuing to change. So hopefully Texas benefits from this new landscape. We got deep pockets, and we keep loading up on talent. Hopefully we hit the portal harder this coming offseason than we did this past offseason. But Texas is situated very nicely to dominate the new era of college football, in my opinion. But it starts Saturday in Athens, Georgia. We get that win, and we're off to the races, back to the national championship. I'll book my flight to Miami. I truly believe that if we win this game, we're winning the national championship. Book it, write it. Maybe not this year, but next year for sure. We're going to win the national championship at some point if we win this game. But yeah, we got 1 minute left in the stream. Kyle, any last thoughts before we get out of here?
No, man, just took them horns, and let's see if we can go win the national championship this week.
Hey, it's my Super Bowl, man. Boots on the ground. Let's do it.
Boots on the ground, baby.
All right, y'all. Thank y'all for watching. If y'all made it to the end, please comment that y'all did. We really appreciate that. If y'all stick around this long, and big game this weekend. So please like and subscribe. Give us some love, and thank y'all for watching. We'll see y'all next week after Texas gets the big win in Athens. All right, y'all. Welcome.
Welcome.